if gender ideology does crop up as a subject in the classroom, teachers have to say it is a contested belief system. So that's fair enough.
But there is no evidence that this helps children.
Yeah, this is the study that threw out 101 of the 103 studies that deal with what happens with children that have this care. So there's no evidence. Yeah, there's no evidence if you throw away all the evidence. You morons. Here's some context. Right, let's get into this straight away. The main creator of the report, the woman that was commissioned, Hilary Cass, this is where the name comes from, obviously, is horrendous. There are a lot of anti-trans dog whistles. There are a lot of things to go through. It looks like, from my personal opinion of what I've seen so far, and I've still got more to look at, we're going to look at it all today together. What worries me is that this, like many studies have said, and in the trans community, in the trans world, that we need more information and we need more studies, which I think is kind of widely agreed. Like, it's not necessarily agreed for the same reasons. Like, I would say, yes, we need more studies to show how happy transitioning makes people, because they need it. Like, but then on the other side, it's used in a sense of like, we need more data to show whether it's really worth it or not. You know, it's like a double-edged sword. The same statement can mean two different things. So what I worry about is this was commissioned back in 2020. I'm going to get into the details soon, but just for now, for a kind of context, I worry that this is going to ignite a kind of rapid response from people that are looking to find ways to ban trans care in the UK in a more wider scale, in a more legal, ethical way. And this is going to trigger a lot more studies that, if they're done in the same way, i.e. terribly, then they'll be used to fuel very anti-trans concepts that, you know, I haven't seen the full details. I'm going to get into it, as I say, but there's been talks about, like, we're not fully developed as adults in our brains until 25. So no decision to transition should happen until then. Now, again, the double standards, we're going to talk about double standards for this whole stream, but if you say that about most medical intervention, you would have far more, well, let's just say bad things happening to children, or anyone under 25. That's not even children in my eyes. That's fully fledged adults. I mean, I transitioned at 21. That would have included me 4 years ago from being 25. So I don't think that standard will be applied. Even hypothetically, if it was applied to trans people, that's not going to be applied everywhere. So I think what this is rolling the groundwork out for halting trans affirming care in the UK in a completely different way to the US. I think remembering, like, in the US, we're seeing a very overt, religious-fueled, Republican-fueled anti-trans movement. In the UK, it's the Tories and the Labour Party. It's a mix of TERFs and people, and there's a lot of, like, white female privilege happening that's involved and stuff. And it's a lot more insidious. It's going to be a different battle to fight back at. It really will.
The latest major anti-transgender attack has come out of England. The Cass Review, which was a report that was commissioned after political concerns around transgender people in England, was just released this week. And while everybody expected it to be anti-trans, I don't think people expected how big it would be and how vehemently anti-trans it was. So let's go over it. The Cass Review claims that it has looked at all of the evidence and determined that the evidence for puberty blockers and gender-affirming care for trans youth is remarkably weak. In doing so, it cast out 101 out of 103 studies that showed gender-affirming care is effective and safe for transgender youth everywhere. That's not all, though. The Cass Review actually didn't produce much new data. It only looked at a handful of clinics, and in those clinics, it actually found that only 10 people detransitioned out of 3,000 people that went through gender-affirming care clinics in the United Kingdom. Of course, that data is not enough to make an anti-trans stance, so the Cass Review releases this 388-page document detailing why it thinks trans care should not really be allowed for most people. And in fact, it even advocates for restrictions on 18 to 25-year-olds. Now, it has since come out that some of the members of the Cass review team had ties to conversion therapy, like the Gender Exploratory Therapy Association. And Cass herself, according to emails leaked from a court review on the Florida gender-affirming care ban, met with Ron DeSantis picks to help ban gender-affirming care in the state of Florida. Now, this Cass review is going to be used to try to draw down trans care worldwide. And we're already seeing people like the Alliance Defending Freedom and the Heritage Foundation put out information about it. The truth is, though, is that the Cass review is not actually a scientific document. It's a political one, designed to manufacture consent to target trans people everywhere.
Well said. Fantastic intro to what's happening. And we're going to look into these things in more detail as we go. But as Erin's also mentioned, 10 people detransitioning out of 3,000. Anyone here that needs the context? Detransitioning is someone that partially does some form of trans-affirming gender care, finds that it potentially isn't for them, and halts, because detransitioning also includes the word like halting, the situation of not taking further care, which again you could argue is very different to actively trying to reverse what's happened. Detransitioning also doesn't explain in that one word whether doing so was because of lack of social support, lack of funding, and also in a system that transitioning is really difficult to do so, which we'll get into, with waiting lists and etc. Compared to also like detransitioning because the dysphoria was mistaken or it was misdiagnosed. Even including all of those potential factors of misleading as to whether detransitioning is the term, like, you know, it happened or not. Only 10 out of 3,000, I think she said. I mean, there is no other comparison in the medical industry as to how high that success rate is technically. So, the Cass report. So the Cass report review, this is the main website. It's an independent review. Let's see if we can get any details here. I mean, let's watch this introduction by Hilary Cass herself, I guess.
My name's Hilary Cass. I'm a paediatrician, specialising initially in children with disability. I spent a large part of my career in policy. I was involved in medical education, and also I was president of the Royal College of Paediatrics and Child Health. Initially, NHS England asked me to do a very focused piece of work last year to just look at the published evidence.
NHS England, I think also that was commissioned by Kemi Badenoch, who will come up later, I'm sure. But Kemi Badenoch is a Tory in the UK, conservative, very well known to be a TERF. She's actually trying to get being transgender as a protected characteristic off the protected characteristic list in the Equality Rights Commission Act or something. Basically being like, yeah, trans people should be allowed to be bullied legally. Like that's what she's doing. That's what she's up to. And it's all under the guise of equality for women and fairness for women, cis women, allegedly.
On the hormones that are used for children and young people with gender dysphoria, but it rapidly became apparent that there were much broader problems in the whole care of children, from when they first question their gender right through to those who need medical treatment. From the moment I started just looking at the very simple task of looking at the published evidence, I've just become increasingly worried about the numbers of young people in distress, on a waiting list, not getting the appropriate services, at risk. And that's not okay, it's just not acceptable. First of all, there's going to be a lot of listening to everybody who has experience, either as a young person, a family member, or a professional in the field.
How many actual trans people or trans kids did you actually listen to? How good does that listening go? I can't wait to see and hear the evidence behind all of this listening that you did. Can't wait to see how that went.
Secondly, we're going to be reviewing the existing evidence. And thirdly, we're going to be filling, as best we can, gaps in that evidence with our own research. And then we have to bring all those strands together through a series of consensus roundtables to get some answers. Well, the whole process is going to take longer than anybody would like, but I don't think we should get too hung up about the final end point. What's going to be important is that the service will keep developing and growing in the interim. Now, I know that feels a bit like building a plane while it's in flight, but nonetheless, I think we will have some early recommendations and we will share those as soon as we can. It's really important that we hear the lived experience of young people and their families, and indeed some of the older people who've already been through the service. But we also want to hear from professionals about their worries and anxieties about how to support these young people. And then there'll be more formal ways to get involved in our research, in roundtable discussions, and in consensus discussions and service planning. So many different options along the route of the review. Well, I think everybody knows that this is an area in which there are incredibly strongly held views, and that the debate can get very toxic because of that.
Yeah, like my extremely, incredibly strong view that I deserve to live. So do all trans people. And trans affirming care is an extremely crucial part of that, funny enough. I know that makes me a trans activist in this climate, allegedly. Sorry about that. Sorry if that's annoying to you.
People are actually afraid to talk openly, and we have to find a way to allow them to do so in a safe environment. Ultimately, we've got to find a way to put the animosity aside, to come to a shared consensus and to find the best possible way forward for children and young people and their families.
Wow, this is like a dystopia. This feels so dystopian just at the offset. Dr. Hilary Cass was appointed by NHS England and NHS Improvement to chair the independent review of gender identity services for children and young people. Apparently that's up to 25. So hey, if you're 25, you're still young, people. It's kind of like a wolf in sheep's clothing vibe. It's like, it's doing everything to look very bona fide, very well put together, and then we know the truth. I have the whole report, okay? I've got 388-page report here. First 2 pages are just fully blank. I think that's a waste of PDF paper. Do you know what I mean? Like, what are you doing, girl? But look, this is the... oh my God. Page 233. This is the... this is the famous image already. We've got memes for this later. I've already found it. Page 223 is the AI looking generated picture of a trans person that they used. Because they couldn't even find an actual trans person's photo to use. This is the tweet from someone we got later. I can't remember her name. Like, this is how ridiculous this report is. Like, you can't find an actual picture of an actual trans person. How many of these lived experience did you listen to? I mean, come on. What on? This is insane. This is ridiculous. Oh yeah, that button is a bit janky. That button is a bit janky. I'd love to be like one of those people that can analyze AI and like find plot holes. Yeah, look, that's like faded there. That doesn't even... Oh, let's see if we can find any other AI plot holes. I love doing this. I mean, who looks that symmetrical and like... How many fingers? I always check the fingers. AI photo check, always check the fingers. Thumb each. Oh, that. Oh, that. Oh. That finger is like weird. The finger is weird. Look at these fingers. I mean, I'm scared that I'm just like laughing at someone's actual fingers, but this looks AI-y, just surely. Look at the like blending of these fingers here. Look at the like the bow here. That's not what an actual shoelace looks like tied up. Do you know what I mean? No, I think we can should we try and find another one? This is fantastic. I think we can surmise that that's AI. The only credit I will give, I mean, I know this is a stretch, but I'm impressed that someone has the imagination to add AI to a report. I would never assume to be such an idiot. Do you know what I mean? Like, I think that's kind of fantastic. To be like, no, we need some headless pictures of some alleged questioning trans kids. Let's AI that. You know, like, we wouldn't even find a stock photo. I love that. I love that. The audacity is almost like impressive. The data in the report is AI generated. Love that. Probably is. Are the trans people here in the room now with you, Hillary? Like, yeah, totally. If this person does exist, I would love to meet them in person. They look like ethereal. They're so like perfect. Not a flaw in their skin. I mean, at least airbrushed. I don't think that's the kind of photo you put out there when you're trying to say that trans care doesn't work, because this person is clearly winning at life if they are real. Like, that person looks like they've just won life. They look amazing. Oh, another photo. Oh, I love this. Ooh. Why has she just got loads of people like at school in their bags? Like, that's so funny. What do we think on this one, chat? This like plasticky bag looks a little bit fake. So the hair down here is like past the bag. And then up here is like ends well above that, I would say. No, that's a bit of a stretch. Yeah, look at like here, like the way that cuts off looks really off. Do you know what I mean? Either this girl had a poor haircut or it was just like AI'd AF. And let's not forget the context of what we're looking at here. We're looking at an official NHS England issued commissioned report on whether trans people should bloody exist. The person has AI pictures of people from behind, one from the face, from the front. And allegedly she wanted to make sure to talk to various, you know, people's lived experiences and talk to the kids. She's not even got a single photo of one of them. And I, for one, if I had been asked and reached out to, I would be like, yes, you bloody well better use my photo. Make sure my name is in there. Make sure people can find me, because I want people to know that my voice was heard. But no, this is the best she's got. Ethereal AI aliens that look far too perfect and are not going to be very good advocates to show that being trans isn't an amazing thing. Again, like I say, I think this CAS review is just going to be a trigger to have more extremely biased, one-sided things released. 5 key takeaways, concerns and questions from the CAS report. This was written on the 10th of April by Amelia Hansford. After 4 years of waiting, the CAS report into the model of care for trans youth in England has been published in full. Hilary Cass warns Kemi Badenoch over risk of conversion practices ban. Kemi Badenoch, the Women and Equalities Minister, was warned about the risks of planned ban. Wait, what? She's just what? Kemi Badenoch, the Women and Equalities Minister, was warned about the risks of a planned ban on conversion practices by the doctor who reviewed the gender identity services for under 18s. Leading paediatrician Dr. Hilary Cass said she has been really clear with the Cabinet Minister that any plans for a change in the law would have to avoid creating problems for professionals. What did I just read? What did I just read? Badenoch is now drawing up legislation to ban conversion practices, which are defined by the British Psychological Society as an attempt to change someone's sexual orientation or gender identity. But the plan has been delayed repeatedly amid splits in the Conservative Party, which reports that a draft bill could now be pushed beyond the general election. Campaigners have called for the ban to be brought in quickly to prevent lives being ruined by the attempts to secure LGBTQ+ people, of course, from being themselves. Any bill would be expected to include protection for teachers, doctors and parents who some Tory MPs believe could face criminal action if they advise children against changing their gender. In an interview in The Guardian, Cass said that she would be really clear with the government that any legislation would have to take inordinate care to not make workforce problems worse than they are. What does she mean there? What is she saying there? Her review, published on the Wednesday, found that medical professionals had expressed concerns about potential accusations of conversion practice, noting that they were also concerned about the interpretation of potential legislation on conversion practices. Cass said she had urged Badenoch to ensure care is taken not to make professional fearfulness worse than it already is, citing concerns among some medics over being called transphobic if you take a more cautious approach. So is she for conversion therapy? Yeah, am I not? I'm right? This is deliberately trying to make it very unclear, but she's basically saying, well, we shouldn't rule out conversion therapy. We shouldn't make it harder for people to suggest that. Oh, well then flub it up. Like, oh, screw her then. Oh, this is insane. Oh, well then this is, okay, clear as day. Okay, I mean, what on earth? Like, that's insanity. Cass's view set out that no LGBTQ plus group should be forced to undergo a conversion practice. Well, that's not saying that she doesn't believe that it also could be effective, or it's something that should be considered. There's that thing about JK Rowling, which I wanted to cover as well. Like, she just come out and said, like, I won't accept an apology from a whole bunch of people. And it's like, honey, we didn't ask. No one said they wanted to apologize, nor did they. No one cares. JK Rowling's Magic Circle of Trust. I'm gonna show that, yeah. Who backed author during bitter trans row, and who dumped her? As Harry Potter creator says she won't forget Daniel Radcliffe and Emma Watson's betrayal. She's not doing okay. She's not doing all right. Girl, you need to leave that castle and walk around your moat a couple times, touch some grass. Her inside, we've got Helen Joyce, who we saw earlier, the overt TERF. And I think a range of people that have also just kind of said, like, the cancellation's a bit silly, are, like, on her inside. Look at the kind of age range as well of the people on the outside that is, like, people that are woke. You could just so tell they're woke, can't you? The novelist 58, who also writes crime novels under the male pen name Robert Galbraith. Bit sussy, I think. You should stick to your female name, your biological name. You can't just change names, JK, okay? You get given a name at birth. The doctor looks at your genitals and decides who you're going to be. You can't just change your name. You can't just use another name. So what, am I just meant to use another name for you? How far does it go? I mean, you just telling me you have a different name. It's like, how much am I going to remember? I mean, this is ridiculous. What if every single child at school came to their teacher and said, Miss, I have another name. I want to be used as a different name. Call me Robert from now on. I mean, it's just ridiculous. I don't think we should be spreading these name ideologies out to children without full facts to tell whether it's actually very logical, whether someone can change their name or not. I think this is outrageous. I think this is dangerous. And I'm not adverse to some people having name conversion therapy in which they convert back to their old name. I'm not saying it should be done to all name changes. I'm just saying that sometimes if you're going to use a pseudonym to write another novel, that potentially you should be doing the due diligence to whether it's harmful to your novel. Has assembled a squad of allies who fear additional legal rights for transgender people will infringe on the rights of women. Her years-long campaign, you can say that again, for what she labels sex-based rights has seen former Potter stars distance themselves from the multi-millionaire writer and directly oppress explicit support for transgender rights. The publication of the Cass Review, which concluded that gender services for children were not making decisions based on the backed medical evidence, because we threw it all out, prompted her to say that she was unlikely to forgive stars such as Daniel Radcliffe and Emma Watson for their views. I love that. A lot of the public TERFs have risen up and they're like, see, I told you, I will accept my apology now. And everyone's like, no, we're not. No one's apologizing, darling. Okay. Oh yeah, no nicknames until 25. Yes, pup underscore is no nicknames until 25. I agree. I absolutely agree. I think there should be a different line of care for people that are choosing a nickname before 17 and choosing a nickname between the ages of 17 to 25, because you're not really of the full adult mental capacity to understand if you really want a nickname or not. And society is going to have to adjust itself just to talk to you in that same nickname. I think it's just ridiculous that we're telling people that they should have a nickname. We need more data to see as to whether it's actually justified that people should be talked to by their nickname and it's not actually going to cause them long-term harmful effects. And also, it really affects the rights of people that use their original name from birth. I mean, I think that we should have more rights for people that use their biological name. I think we should have, we should live in a society where that's just common sense. It's just common sense. If you get given a name at birth, you stick to it. You can't just change name. And if people want to live in the fantasy that they've changed their name and that's good for them, fine. But just don't throw it down my throat, okay? I don't want to hear about it, all right? Why do we need to see it on the internet and the media? It's just ridiculous. The quote we were talking about earlier, this is a tweet from Alexandra Calabala, I believe it's pronounced. TLDR of the CAS review. We disregarded nearly all studies because they weren't double-blinded, controlled studies. We also stopped reviewing newer studies released in the last 2 years. As a result, we were left with very little evidence. That is an impossible standard. Yes, exactly. And, yeah, totally. Nicknames haven't always existed. It's a social contagion to want a nickname. That's funny. So here the highlighted thing is lack of binding and no control group. Lack of blinding and no control group is listed on all of these studies. So this is the evidence to what we were saying about how they've just thrown out a whole bunch of studies that basically didn't say what they wanted to. And now the transphobic media and any other people that want to use this as an example are going to just completely run with this. So this should alarm you whether you care about the trans community or not. You really, really should see this as a platform for what about everything else? What about if they did this for everything else? In the CAS report, you disregarded 98% of studies about gender-affirming care, all of which provided its benefits. They were not double-blinded. Oh, we're talking about effects of hormone on the body. There is no use for double-blinding. The studies you chose to keep weren't double-blinded either. I mean, if that's true, that's also T. That's ridiculous. I liked their results. Isn't your conclusion to deny body autonomy for trans people up until under 25 years old a bit extreme? The brain isn't fully formed until then. The brain is never fully formed. Yet we allow people under 25 to play hockey, get abortion, vote, and fight in wars. And now they get to do all that while expressing the gender we forced them to. Oh, that's ugly and sinister. Look at that picture. The report published on Wednesday the morning, 10th of April, has made upwards of 32 recommendations to restructure the way in which trans youth receive care. NHS England commissioned paediatrician Dr. Hilary Cass, we know this, the full report, New recommendations include a holistic approach to treatment, while emphasising extreme caution in prescribing puberty blockers to under 18s. Puberty blockers are designed for people under the age in which you would have puberty. Because, funny enough, as per the word, they're puberty blockers. They also don't stop the puberty entirely. You can still have puberty later on, if I'm not mistaken. So, like, the idea that you would have puberty blockers blocked until after a time when many people have at least started and felt most of the effects of puberty is ridiculous. That's ridiculous. Especially if we clearly have a large proportion of those dysphoric trans kids that are mentally have mental health problems because of this, that there is a chance that they don't make it through puberty, if you catch my drift. It's so obviously a way of preventing trans people from existing that I think we're going to look back in the future. People are going to look back at the past and be like, did they know that this was happening? Did no one fight back against the anti-trans movement? And we're like, we all tried. I sat here and drank coffee and spoke about it on my live stream. Okay, I'm doing my best. But jokes aside, like, it's insane. This is insane. Okay, what are the proposed changes to trans youth healthcare? As part of the primary goal, the CAS report has made several recommendations about reconstructing the model in which trans youth clinics provide care, building on from the recommendations made in its interim report in 2022 on creating regional hubs in England, which NHS England has already actioned. Other systematic changes include the separation of pathways between prepubescent children and teenagers. The pathways include avenues for young children and their families, which the report says will focus on how parents can best support their child in a balanced and non-judgmental way. Yeah, I mean, so far that isn't horrendous. A follow-through service for 17 to 25-year-olds who will transition to one of England's adult gender identity clinics, GICs, is also recommended. This recommendation has received a mixed response from experts who say that the idea has merit but could potentially restrict hormones for adults. So I think it sounds like, just from that, she's cleverly said, yes, we should have a different pathway of care for anyone under 17 and over 17. To which I think many people would be on the side of understanding. You do need a different amount of care because you need a prepubescent amount of care, i.e. puberty blockers, and post-puberty you need, like, almost, I would call it damage control. But going from 17 all the way up to 25 is a huge red flag for me, because even legally, we're classed as adults at 18. So there's no reason why you couldn't have a bracket for 17 to 18-year-olds, absolutely. Or just a post-pubescent bracket entirely. The fact that this is reaching all the way up to 25 is extremely worrying, because then if this second half, this 17 to 25-year-old bracket is then classed as also terms for like halting trans care, you've also like prevented trans care from well up to into like adulthood, in which case most people that are suffering from mental health issues as a part of not having their care, which we're already seeing, have a longer period in which they have to live with that discomfort, let's put it like that. And I think that they all know exactly what they're doing here. I'm not in the opinion that these people are stupid enough to not understand what they're doing. I'm very much in the belief that they know exactly what they've commissioned, they know exactly the response they need, and they threw out 101 out of 103 data pools just because they wanted an exact response. 100%. Okay, concerns raised over hormone access for adults under 25. Yeah, absolutely. Concerns over access to gender-affirming care for under 25s has been a major talking point since the report was released. Experts, activists, and families of trans youth have expressed concerns over the report's 23rd recommendation to establish a follow-through service for 17 to 25-year-olds. The recommendation states that each regional hub should establish a service for those transitioning to an adult GIC, either by extending the range of the regional children and youth people service or through linked services. While the possible impact remains unclear, this could mean that adults under 25 could be subject to the precautions and restrictions around child and adolescent care despite being over the age of 18. Yes, exactly. The way that this has been marked together, I think, is crazy. 18 to 25 is 6 years. No. Louise, learn to do maths. Isn't it 7 years? I clearly need to go back to school. I'm joking. It's 7 years. 7 years of adulthood, of working, paying taxes that go into the NHS system. Bear in mind, this is the UK after all. We have free healthcare, but we pay tax to pay for this. Imagine waiting on a waiting list for knee surgery for 7 years of your life and paying into a system in which you're providing like tax to this system to exist, and you're not getting something that is life-threatening for you. For 7 years of adulthood, no less. That's insane. Why 25? And the reasoning behind it allegedly is because that's when the brain is fully developed. But we do not apply that same standard for the majority of other medical interventions that are long lasting for anyone. So why would it be applied for trans people? That is an extremely worrying red flag and dog whistle. And I won't that is all I can see this as. The Tories, the Conservatives, are known to be the more, obviously, like right-wing party that's known. They've been in power for a long time. They've done terrible things, austerity, everything. However, the Labour Party, which are considered to be the more left-leaning of the two-party system, the more progressive, are just as much behind this as anything else. Which is, honestly, it was like a joke a couple of years ago. We would be like, oh, which one do I pick? Like the, bad one or the worst one? Now I think we're at the point of like, it's extremely worrying how Labour haven't changed their tune on how much they support the anti-trans movement and are just fully now guns blazing at the vanguard of it in many ways, for sure. In Pink News, Labour's West Streeting no longer stands with the statement, trans women are women.
If you'd asked me a few years ago on this topic, I would have said, trans men are men, trans women are women, some people are trans, get over it, let's move on, this is all blown out of proportion. And now I sort of sit and reflect and think, actually, there are lots of complexities.
Isn't that
and
the problem,
challenges in
that
this
leading
debate.
figures like yourself, and I'm not just singling you out, but leading figures like yourself were saying, get over it,
No,
when
I
people
think
were trying to
that's- I
when
think
people
you're
were trying to
right.
raise the facts. So you regret.
I think
you have
we've
a
got to,
regret.
I absolutely take the criticism on the chin. And at the same time, I also think that there's been some absolutely ugly rhetoric directed towards trans people who are at the wrong end of all the statistics on hate crime, on self-harm, suicide, mental ill health. So I think we've got a collective responsibility to be open to this debate and discussion, and to do so in the sort of thoughtful, careful and sensitive way that Dr. Cass has.
Hopefully a
And I
debate,
hope
a
that's
debate,
where
that
can
we
get
should have
to.
had perhaps a
Yeah.
decade ago. Let's powerful words there. Thank you both.
I mean, that's just frightening to me. That's so frightening. Moving to a point of like, the battle is already shifting, the power is shifting and wanting to be on the winning side. That's how it feels to me. If you've come to the conclusion that trans women are women and trans men are men, at some point, you've done the work, you understand the difference between gender and sex and biology and everything. If you get to that point, it's not something you can kind of unbelieve. Does that make sense? Anyone at home? Like, you can't unlearn the science. You can't unthink that. I don't know, unless there's some groundbreaking study that's released, which this is not. Let me be clear, Hillary case is not. I don't think you can go back on believing that.
The entire situation now, in terms of gender ideology and what happens in the classrooms, is not transparent, and it is also not consistent. So we know very well there are schools that will accept a kid who says, I want to be a girl immediately. There are others that won't. There is no consistency across the country or policy about what schools should do. That's why the Education Secretary, Gillian Keegan, is trying to come up with something. I would suggest that if this is her solution, she hasn't published it yet, but this is coming from very good sources, that you're not allowed to discuss gender ideology unless a kid brings it up, unless a pupil brings it up. So that's just not satisfactory. That is ridiculous. In fairness to Ms. Keegan, apparently her
can agree
report
there.
does say that if gender ideology does crop up as a subject in the classroom, teachers have to say it is a contested belief system. So that's fair enough. But just say...
No, I can't do it. I can't do it anymore. I have 4 of these clips lined up and I just can't. It's a contested belief system. I'm a contested belief system. Hey! Welcome to all my contested belief systems in the chat. Pop off, sis. This is hilarious. I was following, I was maybe he's going to talk sense. No. Oh my goodness me. This is insane. Okay, I just want to remind everyone of if you are an ally, if you are, in the chat and you're not trans yourself and you're okay, maybe I don't quite get the severity of this. Imagine if they were saying this about homosexual people, because we literally are just a minority as well. Imagine if they were talking in the same vein right now on actual TV, in actually the real world, saying we need a case study into whether being homosexual is really a thing. And if a kid says to you in school, I think I might be gay, it's not enough to just talk about it then with resources shared with their parents. Go and out them to your parents, by the way. Yeah, your kid said he's gay. No, that's not enough. I think we should have a very clear statement for teachers to say that the idea of being gay is actually a very contested research study. And I asked all my straight friends and they all agree. Fucking oh. You can see that Mother is angry. Oh, I just dropped my first F-bomb. Oh, get a bit hot-bothered. But that's what we're dealing with here. Please don't forget this. If this were happening with any other minority, it would be shaking up the entire world. Okay, right, let's try one more clip of this BS. What we got? We got Maya Forstater got involved on Talk TV. Oh, are we going to really do this? Well, let's do a little bit of each one.
And that's the thing. Even the BBC that, you know, that has been, I mean, I'm sorry, if you've got a kid and you don't realise the trans stuff that's being pushed by the BBC on all their various websites and stuff aimed at kids, you know, you need to take a look, guys. But this is the thing. There was...
Yeah, famously, the BBC's been really pro-trans in all of this. Sorry, what news site are you looking at, Julia? Oh, she's a nasty piece of work. Now, let me say one thing as well. Let me just be very crystal clear about this, okay? Specifically, things like the Tavistock Centre or any other study did unanimously come out with fair data, backed research, a wide range of lived experiences, people's interviews, people coming out. The detransition rate was at like 70%. You know, there was a huge, clear narrative that like, okay, the care provided is not subsequent or there's something wrong here. I would be all ears for this, 100%. I don't want to just come across as some blindly, you know, one-sided person that just thinks everything for everyone. What the only thing I would say, if you're on the fence listening to this now, and you're like, well, apply the same standard to everything else. That is the only thing I would say to you. Apply what's happening to the trans community, trans children, trans youth, trans up to 25-year-olds and above, to every other form of medical intervention and see if you find it to be fair. Apply the same rhetoric that is happening across the media, across all of these pathetic people that have nothing better to do with their lives, like JK Rowling spending 5 years of her time tweeting about accounts that have like 100 subscribers that are like talking about trans people. Apply that same thing to everything else. To something that's important to you, to some form of life that you live. If you are, you know, if you're gay, apply it to how you would feel if this was talking about the gay community. And you know in yourself what it means to be gay. There's something you can't change, that it just happens. And it's an amazing, it's a magical thing. It should be cherished and should be treated with respect. Imagine if you have a child that's 10 years old that says, I want to get braces. They have, you know, teeth that they want to get braces for. And they're told, you can't make that decision until you're 25 years old. In which case, you know, as a guardian to that child, that that's not going to matter. They're going to have lived 25 years of their life with bad teeth. And by the time they're 25, changing the teeth is going to be virtually impossible anyway. Apply it to this. Apply what's happening to other things to digest what's happening here. That's all I would ask.
Reading it this morning and reading, you know, all the summaries of it and going, there wasn't anything in it that I didn't already know. And I'm not an expert in transgender medical care. You're not an expert in transgender medical care. So how
you can
come
say that
we
again?
know it, and for some reason the medics didn't know it? We knew that there was no evidence for a lot of these puberty blocker treatments. We knew that there was no evidence, for instance, that treating children earlier would help with their outcomes. We knew there was no evidence, no follow-ups in terms of long-term impacts. We knew absolutely that a lot of the children that were going to seek transgender care had been the victims of abuse, trauma, neglect. We know that many had a huge percentage had autism. We knew many others had other mental health issues. We knew also an awful lot of the girls, and the massive explosion from a few dozen to thousands of teenage girls thinking that they were transgender, with this social contagion and YouTube videos telling girls, oh, I bind my breasts and now I'm happy again. That sort of nonsense. We knew that a lot of those girls were actually just gay. Nothing wrong with being gay. No one seems to have told them there was nothing wrong with being gay, and they thought therefore they were a girl and a boy and a...
To be fair, I will thank her for one thing. She quite precisely summed up all of the red flags and dog whistles that we need to be aware of in a small 1 minute soundbite. I mean, it was kind of impressive, actually. You mentioned the social contagion. You mentioned the fact that trans people are just gay people. Look, that was fantastic. Well done. Thank you. I mean, this clip's great at summing up how ridiculous you all sound.
So the thing that Cass did, one, she was commissioned by the government to do this, and two, she then commissioned York University and other researchers to look at across all of the evidence so that they could say not just that we know and we feel that this is wrong, but looking at the evidence, we know that there is no evidence that this helps children, and we know that it harms.
Yeah, this is the study that threw out 101 of the 103 studies that deal with what happens with children that have this care, because they weren't double-blinded, which is impossible or unethical to do. especially with puberty blockers. So there's no evidence. Yeah, there's no evidence if you throw away all the evidence. You morons. That's ridiculous. But they're all being really cancelled, by the way. Are you aware of this? They've all been cancelled, of course. They've been cancelled. That's why we're looking at the various interviews that they're on. And I haven't been exactly reached out by GB News to go and talk to them about being trans and happy. Funny that.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's 7 minutes past 1.
I did get turned to that intro, not going to lie.
Now, the evidence supporting gender treatments for children is remarkably weak. That's according to a major new review.
Yes, the CAS report recommends holistic and personal care for children over hormone treatments and puberty blockers.
Well, the Prime Minister has said that the findings show a need for extreme caution regarding children's gender care.
Of course, we must treat children who are questioning their gender with compassion and sensitivity, but we have to recognise that we need to move with extreme caution in these areas because we just simply don't know the long-term impacts of what this all means, and children's well-being is uppermost in our mind.
But the CAS review couldn't be bothered to talk to actual trans people, so they used AI-generated images to stand in for trans people. Yeah, T. No one has that good of a skin complexion, especially around puberty. Do we remember that? Jesus. I mean, like, God. At puberty, I look like a pepperoni pizza. Absolutely. Thank you again for all of your love and support. As always, have a wonderful week. Take care of yourselves. And hopefully chat to some of you in the Discord. It's free to join if you want to chat there. Thank you again. Thank you for a wonderful time. I've had a really great time. Love you all so much. Bye for now. Bye.